Leeroy Gaming community. Come with me if you want to live. Hey everybody, it's Leeroy from Leeroy Gaming with another crazy build for Outriders. Today I am presenting to you my TURminator build. That's T-U-R as in turret and as in the best, the end-all be-all build for turrets. The build I'm going to present to you is a combination of high DPS, darn near invincibility, multiple playstyles. I'm going to be going over everything with you. So we're going to be looking at skills and skill trees. We're going to be looking at armor and mods. We're going to look at weapon and mods. There's going to be two different playstyles depending on weapon setup. And also, you're going to have the super tanky invincible mode, which has 95% resistance, 100% uptime, combined with 78% physical reduction. And then a version that just has a little bit less resistance, but has more DPS. So as you get more skilled, you can swap over to that variant confidently. So we're going to be going over all of that. Hopefully you guys like the content. If you do, you know what to do. Hit that like. As with all my videos, they're going to be in depth. So to help you guys out, if you're impatient, there's timestamps below. Also, if you don't know already, I'm over on Twitch. I stream 6 nights a week. You can check out my streaming schedule as it's updated on Twitch on the schedule page. And I exclusively stream Outriders. Every single night, people come down to my channel. I carry CT15s. You could be level 1. You could be level 30. You could be CT1. You could be CT12. It doesn't matter. You can have a chance to run, get free loot, get hooked up. Also, for those of you that are decked out and want to just become part of the experience, we've basically started growing a group called the Outriders. They're people that sometimes I helped get geared up through the runs, and some that just have come and become part of the process where they come in, they run with me. They're also CT15 certified, and we just have a lot of fun and kick butt. So I hope you come and join us. Again, that's LeeroyGamingStream on Twitch. Hope you come and join us. With that all being said, let's get to the point that you're all waiting for. Let's go and take a look how we put together the TURminator build. All right, guys, we're going to start by looking at the skills. This has not changed at all since the time I made the Mechanist build. So you're still going to be using Blighted Turret. You're still going to be using Cold Snap for your CC, and you're going to be using Cryo Turret. That's going to be the foundation. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the skill tree, which has changed. So we've made a couple minor but very important changes to the skill tree. And this is going to be the difference between being really tanky and not so tanky. So let's take a look at what we've done, what we've taken away, and what we've added. So the main line still remains that we are going down Tech Shaman, pretty much straight across. We are picking up opportunities for damage to freezing. We are picking up the opportunities for armor, so we're getting 60% armor bonuses. But now we have also picked up Anita plates, which is 20% resistance here. And when we go down here and pick up Adrenalizing Antenna, we also go get an additional Anita plates here. This is important. This means before any other modification, we have a 40% resistance. Now, what do we give up for that? So what we have basically given up is the ability to get vulnerability through toxicity, which we would have gotten over here. We also give up the extra percentage damage from the increased vulnerability. Now, here's the logic. We basically saved 3 points that we reallocated to extra armor and extra resistances. Now, we still get vulnerability, but we're getting 15% for 1 point, as opposed to 27.5% for 4 points. So that is a worthy trade-off. And because you have multiple ways of applying cryo damage, you're still going to get that up quite a bit. There's really only one form of toxic damage, and that's your Blight Turret. That's not ranged, so you're not getting that applied to as many things as you do with Frost. And this is why we chose to do this exposing Frost as opposed to this exposing Toxin, because you could technically do either, but this one is far superior. And as we look at the statistics in just a moment, I'll explain exactly why these changes were made as well. So those are the changes from the Mechanist build. Okay, now we're going to go and look at the armor and then the stats related to that. Now there's going to be 2 different variants. I'm going to start with the max DPS variant that also uses rifle damage. So this is the variant that's going to allow you to attack from ranged quite a bit more. So we're going to start with the hat. We need Ronin's Amigasa. And again, if you haven't realized already or you haven't seen my other anomaly-based builds, they're going to be very, very gear dependent. You can build into them, but they're going to really get that high power synergy once you get all these pieces. So on here, very important, the stats are anomaly power, cooldown reduction, and status power. Every piece of gear needs to have anomaly power and needs to have status power. Depending on how confident you feel in your ability, that middle stat point most likely will be cooldown reduction, and you may get between 1 and 2 skill leech potentially. We'll get to that in just a second. But as far as your first 2 mods, you get arms and anomaly. So critical shots increase your anomaly power by basically 20,000 for 6 seconds, 7-second cooldown. You're going to constantly be critting with your weapon, which is going to be 99% of the time using Inferno Seed. We'll go over that in a second as well. So you need to be constantly critting with this. This is the skilled version of the 2 builds. You're also going to get power assimilation. Boost your anomaly power by 11,000 for each elite present on the battlefield. It is not unusual to have 2 or 3 or sometimes more elites, depending on the map, on expeditions. So this will easily be between 11,000 and let's say 33,000 power. Now, there is a version, there's another mod that some people brought up to me that's basically a version of Arms and Anomaly, but it's on crit kill. That mod, I don't recommend for group play. You could theoretically do it in solo play and kind of confidently get the kill shots and sometimes get the crit shot. But what's annoying is if you get the kill shot, but it's one of your turrets, or it's the dot, or you do a burst of your rifle, and the shot that actually kills it isn't the crit shot, it's the one that wasn't a crit. There's just too many variables, and even though that buff provides you 30,000 plus anomaly power to yourself and your party, it just misfires way too often to feel comfortable. Next, we're going to have an epic chess piece. And again, you're going to see anomaly power, cooldown reduction, and status power. Now, again, these points are mandatory here, these mods. You're going to get hail shot, which is huge. So increases your turret's damage based on your status power. You will notice your weapon and every piece of armor has status power. Status power is going to do three things for you, as we see here on the stat sheet. It is going to increase the damage of burning, toxic, and bleeding. And guess what? We are going to be applying in this build burning, toxic, and bleeding. It's also going to increase the duration of freeze, ash, vulnerability, and weakness. And in this build, you're going to be freezing and you're going to be adding vulnerability. So it's very, very important we have as much status power as possible in this particular build. Now, the other, and obviously the other benefit here is it's also going to dramatically increase the amount of damage of your cryo turrets. And the fact that you have 2 cryo turrets out, it's going to double the value. So needless to say, even though it's a tier 1 mod, absolutely mandatory for this build. Next one is Captain Hunter. You know it, you love it. It's boring, it's bland, but increases your damage against elites by 25%. That's all type of damage, physical damage, weapon damage, anomaly damage. Put it in, forget about it. It's there, it kicks butt. Next, we have the legs. Again, anomaly power, cooldown reduction, and status power. Another mandatory mod, twins. So this is going to allow you to have 2 cryo turrets out at a time. Huge, game-changing, doubles the damage on your cryo turrets. And then you're going to have your 1 defensive on the baseline setup. So regardless of whether you change the next ability, this is the one I recommend having. It is damage absorber. It's going to increase your armor by 52,000 and resistances by 10%. Now, if you remembered on the skill tree section, we have plus 60% armor. So this gets multiplied by 1.6. So this is quite a bit more. This is over 80,000 armor in reality when you have everything combined. So it gets you to kind of the threshold where you want to be at armor-wise without needing anything else. The 10% resistance, that's a nice little icing on the cake. It's going to baseline get you to 50% resistance, which is more than enough if you're competent at playing and not just standing in absolutely everything. So that's what I use for my baseline setup. And again, both of those are mandatory in my opinion. Next, we have the gloves. Again, anomaly power, but now you're going to have skill life leech and status power here. Okay, so status power again mandatory, but now we get a little extra of that skill life leech. Your turrets are going to keep you alive. Even if you get knocked down, etc., they're going to fill you up super fast. This is, think of them as healing over time effects that your 3 turrets are going to provide for you. So this is a big deal, okay? Now, take a look at the actual definition, though, at skill life leech as well. It says, the percentage of health regained by dealing anomaly damage includes status damage. This is why we get this. Because you are going to be doing toxic damage, you're going to be doing bleed damage, as well as burn damage. All 3 of those at huge amounts, and they're all going to heal you over time. So between the turrets and the application of those dots, you're going to be permanently getting healed no matter what's going on. This is the second factor of your invincibility. So this is why it's so very, very important that we have some of that, because you only need so much cooldown at the end of the day. Now, as far as your mods, you're going to do increased damage for cryo turret. This may not seem like a big number, 5,363, but you have to realize if you take a look at the skill, its base damage is like 6,000. So this almost doubles the base damage you do with them. And remember, you have 2 cryo turrets. So baseline, before any modifiers, it's really increasing the combined base damage of your turrets by 11,000 roughly. So that's a big number there, and it makes a big difference. Next, you're going to have Euthanizer, okay? Deal 25% more damage against enemies afflicted by Toxic. So you're going to be applying Toxic from your Blight turret. That's going to be pretty consistent. Anything that's going to need that extra DPS, meaning elites, you're going to be dropping your Blight turret near. It's going to be impacted by that AoE flamethrower, okay? So this is pretty much a certain thing as far as applying damage when it counts. Next, the final piece, and this is the piece that may get modified in a second version of this that I'll explain. But these are your boots, and similar to the gloves, you can have Anomaly power, you can have Status power, and Skill Life Leech. So notice we have 2 pieces of Skill Life Leech and 3 of cooldown reduction. Now also, quick note, because we're talking stats, your main weapon is also going to have Status power. So this is key. All 6 weapons in this format, or 6 items that are going to be equipped most of the time, are going to have that equipped. And let me make sure to select it for when we look at the stat sheet. Okay, now when we talk about the mods, it's very important. You need to have it rolled with Bullet Kindling, because you deal 20% more damage against enemies afflicted by burn. Now, there is no, from what I've seen, so somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I've done a bunch of research, there is no legendary 25% burn damage. There's just, this is the best one, 20%. Okay, so notice now we're going to basically have major multipliers for 3 major types of damage or status effects that you're going to be applying to enemies consistently. You're going to have the 20% damage, all damage increase to things that are burning, 25% to freeze, and then you have this one right here, 25% to toxic. Now I want to point out something. You technically do bleed damage, okay? So you could apply the 25% to bleed. The thing is, you cannot put it into this Bullet Kindling spot because it's a tier 3. Okay, so it would have to take the place of either Euthanizer or Frost. Now, because these 2 are applied by your turrets that are extremely consistent, I feel like that's going to have more uptime of that than the bleed. You're only applying your bleed with your rifle when you crit, and it's going to apply bleed. So while that's consistent, there will also be times where you don't have it up. So you could go either way, and if you were dead set on it, go ahead. You can swap out any one of these for the 25% bleed, but I think statistically you're going to get a little bit more mileage out of this combination. And again, the 20% burn is not going to change. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the weapons for setup 1. Again, setup 1 is rifles. It's more long ranged, and there's going to be more dots. There's going to be more status effects applying for this playstyle. So your main weapon is Infernal Seed. So again, you want to max it out. Status power is huge. The only thing you really care about on this part is really status power. You're going to be doing some damage with the rifle itself, but this is an anomaly build. That's going to be maybe 8 or 9 million damage, your actual weapon. All of it's going to come from the dots and also your mods. So you have Wrath of the Moloch, and Ultimate Bow and Shrapnel. The key to these is they're both on crit, and they both have a 3-second cooldown. So you want to be critting something every 3 seconds. Luckily, this is a very steady weapon that 95% stability, quite accurate. You can just easily snipe crit shots. And you're going to get both of these giant explosions before any even modifications. You're hitting for 360,000 AoE, and that crits quite a bit higher. Or not necessarily crits, but gets modified by your different modifiers, depending what debuffs you have on enemies. And then again, you apply burn and bleed in AoE. That is the key. You're going to be applying 2 more negative status effects. And that's why you want this combination in this weapon more than anything else. Now, I want to point out, you'll notice in the thumbnail, I basically insinuate you can run this with an Anomaly build or not. This version right now is not reliant, not an Anomaly build, my mistake, on Moaning Winds. Now, this version here does not require it. You can just go with the gun the whole time. It definitely doesn't rely on you spamming Moaning Winds to do damage. But if you treat Moaning Winds how I originally utilized it in my Mechanist build as kind of like a thermal detonator, as I like to say. So let's say you're getting mobbed, then you swap over it and use the AoE to clear the things around you and then go back to sniping. That's how I think you should do it. So for that case, we put the Anomaly on there, and you want Fortress and Moaning Wind. So during that short period you swap over, you're doing the AoE, you're losing some DPS because you're not shooting with the rifle, but you're making it up because your turrets automatically do more damage. And you can basically do a very similar thing with Torment and Agony. The difference here is you're not putting Fortress on there. Instead, you're putting Moaning Winds. Now, the reason I like this weapon right here is, again, it has status power, and it also comes with Clip Combustion. So it has a secondary, smaller AoE, so you can stack these two AoEs, and if something's close enough, it's got almost 500,000 base damage for anything within 5 yards of you, so it doesn't hurt. Again, looking at the Anomaly, it doesn't have the status power. It's the only piece of gear you have that does not have status power, but again, you're just quickly swapping off on it. So this is a supplemental element. If you really want to prove yourself to be like better than thou, you can like not go of these. You don't need them. These are not required for the build. You just need a really good rifle, and preferably this setup in particular. So that is the setup, armor, and weapons for setup 1, which is the rifle setup. All right, guys, we're going to take a look at one last weapon variant for the Inferno Seed. So this one would mean that we would keep Wrath of Moloch and put on Fortress. So the idea here is we are giving up one of the dots, but we are gaining a flat damage to everything. And since we have high armor, this can be 43%. Now, obviously, if you don't have Fortress, do the other option with the double AoE dots. So you're sacrificing in one way and having one less dot, but the nice thing about dropping off the bleed dot is we have no modifier on the gear to increase damage when something is bleeding. But we do have fire, we do have the other two elements. So that is a variant that you can utilize as an option if you either prefer, or again, if you don't have the other mod that you need. All right, now we're going to take a look at the armor and weapons for the second build variant. And this is kind of like the run and gun, get in people's faces kind of setup. Okay, this is the version that you're more likely to also make adjustments for invulnerability. And I'll comment on that in just a second. And there's going to be a gear switch that we'll go over in just a moment. So again, let's take a look at the armor and weapons for this. Now, some things are not changing. We're not changing the headgear. So again, you're still going to have arms and Anomaly. You're going to have power assimilation, same reasons as before. Still key, got to have mandatory Anomaly power, mandatory status power, and this comes with cooldown reduction. For the chest piece, again, Captain Hunter, got to have the hail shot, same stats as the helmet. Legs also remain the same. Again, your baseline damage absorber, damage mitigation tool is damage absorber. It's nice and consistent. And you're going to use twins so you can get 2 frost turrets. Then you're going to have the gloves, also the same stats, but now as before. But remember that skill life leech is there, so you get more survivability. The more powerful cryo turrets. And now, very important, Euthanizer is one of the 2 potential notifications that you will sacrifice if you need more survivability. And again, the rifle build, because you're so far back, you're unlikely to ever need it. This one, because you're getting within 5 to 8 meter range of the mobs, you're more susceptible to multiple elites hitting at the same time. And literally, that's the only time you might die, where like if 3 Broodmothers were to hit you at the same time, you might die. Anything less than that, if your turrets are up, auto-healing you, probably not. So note, Euthanizer is the first candidate for that. Now, here's the thing that we're going to go over where there's going to be an actual piece of gear change. I'm not 100% happy about this, but I have not found a better alternative. And I'll explain why. So we're putting Plague Sower's boots on. So, so it has 1 wasted stat, close range damage, means nothing to us. 1 mandatory status power, which is the second best, most important stat here, but it sacrifices Anomaly power, which is a bit of a hit. And I teetered back and forth whether it's worth it. The only thing is that's a plus is max health isn't useless. If this was like firepower, it'd be useless. Max health could help you in theory some, but it's not going to be the same as 14,000 anomaly power. So it's a minus, but it could be worse. It could have been firepower on this. The reason we keep this is it allows you to get 2 tier 3 mods on here, as opposed to if we had kept the other piece of armor that we had in the first setup, we would have only been able to change 1. So the big difference here is, since we're more in melee, we're actually buffing the bejesus out of our Blight turret. Notice, the Blight turret now does an additional 11,000 damage. So let's see how much that bumps up to, baseline. So if you go here, Blight turret, it's now 15,354.7 damage baseline. And remember, it's like a flamethrower, so it's kind of frontal AoE count. So this started at like less than 5,000. So this basically triples the damage on this before modification. And again, it can impact multiples of enemies at the same time. So do not underestimate it. This is why we made that sacrifice, because I feel like that's going to give you a better benefit potentially than the alternative if you're going for this close build. Now you also have Shatter here, and that's the one you can modify. So if you want to be high risk run and gun, you're going to keep it like this, okay? You're going to literally, you cannot buff your turrets more right now as far as like buffs that I find worthwhile. But it comes at a big sacrifice. This is also why I personally prefer setup 1, but note this is an option. Now let's look at the weapons. There's a big change here. So at the top, your backup weapons that you're going to now cycle through, you have the Anomaly, okay? And you're also going to have Death Shield, which is basically the opposite of the Anomaly, but fills the same exact role. You share each other's buffs. Now, you could be really cute with it and have 2 Anomalies or 2 Death Shields. Doesn't matter if you've had enough of them. Obviously, there's a big requirement to be able to build this. You need to get these and an extra one. But this is going to be key to your rotation. On top of that, your primary weapon they're going to equip 90% of the time is actually an epic pistol. And you need to get status, power, and skill life leech on it. You also need to modify it so it has full auto, because you want to be spraying bullets. The key here is you need to effectively and easily get crits so that we can maintain arms and anomaly up 24/7 as close as we can. So you're going to be basically running around with these bullets, and whenever you get in a group or these are off cooldown, you basically cycle through them really quick, go back to this gun. Also, what's key here is you're going to have Fortress, so the whole time you're running around, you're going to get a 43% damage to all your turrets. That's huge. Also, you're going to get Resistance Breaker. Okay? Now, for those that are uninitiated and are new, Resistance is your mitigation against magic, aka anomaly damage. All your abilities, including your punches, are pure anomaly damage. Only your gun damage, your actual bullets, are physical damage when we play. So this basically boosts huge amount of damage to your entire build. Now, the resistance breaker is key here, because notice it says shots decrease your target's resistance by 35% for 6 seconds. Okay, so what is resistance? Resistance is important because this is your defense against all anomaly damage. All abilities and punching even is considered anomaly damage. So at higher difficulties like CT15, even though there's no way to kind of see it by looking at an enemy, most of them will have certain forms, if not very high, resistances. So what this is going to allow you to do that is strip up to 35% of that. So in an optimal scenario against elites that may reasonably have at least 35% resistance, this is going to increase your total DPS by 35%, as long as you keep it up. And it's really easy to keep up because you're shooting 1,000,000 bullets a second, and it's going to last 6 seconds, and you can proc it every 1 second. So you can, even if you have multiple elites in your area, you can kind of spray the bullets, and over 2 or 3 seconds, hit multiple enemies, debuff them all. Okay, and then you're going to obviously swap over. You're going to do your Moaning wind procs. That's all modified by that as well, doing tons and tons of damage. So those are the weapons. Now let's take a quick look at the stat sheet, the way it's developed here when it comes to defenses, and then I can show you the mod that you're going to utilize if you need more survivability. So baseline, as built, you're going to have basically 77-ish, so this 76.7 percent physical damage reduction. That's plenty. If you haven't seen my video on how defense works, you can check that out. It should be linked up above and below. But basically, armor negates physical damage, which is bullets, and like physical attacks by enemies, and everything else is resistances. So both the physical damage reduction actually has diminishing returns. Resistance is not, from everything we can see. So I have 169,000 armor, and that gives me, again, 3/4 damage mitigation. That's plenty. If I were to have 250,000, this would not go up to 100. Probably be like 80, 81. Probably now worth a mass amount of armor. So if you can get yourself to around 72, 75, 76, 77, anywhere around there as far as physical reduction, you're perfectly fine. So in this case, we get most of that just from that 60% buff from the skill tree. And again, that one simple defense. But the key here is resistances. So if you're playing a range build, like the rifle build, 50% resistance is plenty. Again, 50% of all anomaly damage you're going to absorb. But if you're dying or you're struggling, especially since this is a close-up build where you're going to be in enemies' faces, we can get this up to 95% by making a change. Now we're going to be putting a new mod, and we're going to be replacing one of the two potential DPS mods. So it's going to be either Shatter or it's going to be Euthanizer. You can kind of pick. Okay, you apply Frost more often or Shatter, but it doesn't stay as long because there's diminishing returns. It's a CC, so you got to balance that out. I personally would probably, I know this is kind of tough, but I lean towards Shatter because while this will impact the DPS against normal mobs more, which you're gonna kind of kill kind of quick anyway, against enemy bosses, you're probably going to have the Toxicon 24/7. So when it comes to killing the things that are a little tougher, which are elites, you're probably going to get a little bit more of that. But it's not night and day. You could basically pick whichever one of these you want, and then you're going to put on the defensive mod that we're going to take a look at right now. All right, guys, so here we are looking at the Plague Sour's boots, and we're going to be changing Shatter. And what we're going to use is a tier 3 mod that's called Circle of Power. Now, it says boost your resistance by 15% every time you use a skill, stacks up to 3 times, and deteriorates every 7 seconds. Now, I originally thought this was amazing, but I thought there was a limitation if you had a build that, for example, had just long cooldowns and you didn't have things to spam. But I recently found out from a comment that you can literally do your melee attack, like your run and leap attack, or you can punch something. That counts as a skill, and this will stack it, which basically means if you need this, it's super easy to stack up. So let me kind of show you the way it works. Super simple. So we're going to go ahead and mod this in here temporarily. Okay, so now here we are, and we're going to basically use 3 abilities. So I'm going to spam 2 of my turrets, or all 3 of my turrets, and then we're going to go into inventory. Take a look at stat sheet. There you go, 95% resistances. So 95% of all anomaly damage gets resisted. You can literally stand in the special attacks of elites, just AFK if you wanted to, and you'll lose like a sliver of health. As opposed to before, you may have been getting 1 or 2 shot. So huge difference. Now it's a little bit of a crutch. As you get skilled, you're not going to need this. So because again, at this point, for this kind of build, you're already sacrificing some stats off your boots. And now you'd be sacrificing a second stat point or a slot that could be for 25% extra damage for his defense. But note, you can definitely do this. And if you're going to run 2 mods for defense, this is the one. And basically, it makes you invulnerable. At that point, really all you're fighting is the kill speed time. For the majority of the runs, you're not going to have an issue. You're definitely going to not die. But if you feel like you're struggling on like 2 or 3 men's on some higher CT15s that have shorter timers, etc., you might decide, hey, I'm getting pretty good at this. I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to put that Shatter back in. Or the bleed 25% if for whatever reason you wanted to do that for the first variant. Okay, guys, I thought I'd show you some footage of how this defensive setup face tanks a Broodmother. So important things to note here. We're not moving at all. Just dropping turrets. We are not using Moaning winds at all. We're only shooting her to basically get our proc off on crit, up our anomaly damage. Otherwise, we're letting mods surround us. We're freezing things, that's fine. And the only movement we're doing is if we get smacked around. So again, the turrets are doing the majority of the damage. We're just trying to get a crit off every 6 to 7 seconds. AoE freeze. And let the turrets do their thing. We're repeatedly casting the turrets for resistances at 95%. And there we go. And as the great Arnie would say, now it's just time to flex like Mr. Olympia, crushing the Broodmothers with my face. Okay, now let's take a look at the weapon and skill rotation with the variable 1, which is going to be the rifle gameplay. So this is the max DPS format also, so you have the 1 resistance mod piece. So it's all going to be about this rifle, and we're going to be using Bailey as the target here. So at the very beginning of the run, you actually want to empty out both of your secondary weapons. So both your shotgun, and then swap over to your handgun, empty that out, and swap back. Now, as I mentioned, you're not going to be using Moaning Winds that often. But again, if you're totally swamped, you just need that quick AoE to get out and then continue. That's what you're going to be swapping to. But for the majority, it's all about going to be getting those crit shots of the rifle. And so normally what's going to happen is you run up. The enemy's going to be coming up. You can start dropping your turrets. Okay. You're going to then freeze the enemies and start hitting crit shots. Now, you don't have to spam the shots. So just every 2 to 3 seconds, because it's a 3-second cooldown, you just want to be aiming and critting. Okay. And every time you crit, you're going to do that AoE explosion that's about 500,000 or so damage, baseline at least. And then you're going to spreading the bleed and also the burn damage. And you're just going to, what I normally do is I just tag something. As soon as I see all the debuffs go on it, I move on to the next enemy, because they're going to take a ton of dot damage. If it's an elite, you may have to kind of go back to it numerous times, but you can kind of spread out. So if you're, first you hit Bailey, there's no guy there, you swap over there. Okay, it's been 2 or 3 seconds, you swap back over. You can kind of rotate and burn down multiple enemies. And again, know that you're also spreading the dots in that AoE range, about 5-yard AoE range around whatever you're hitting and critting. Needless to say, against humans, it's absolutely amazing. And then again, as I mentioned, so let's say you're getting crowded, hit W, drops, hold down, or your swap weapon, so Q for PC, and now I'm back to the rifle. So again, one more time. Again, you're shooting, you're coming in, they're getting closer, you drop your turrets, they're getting almost on you, you freeze, your damage. Okay, now you're getting crowded by enemies. Swap over, hold down to swap to get the second one, back twice to get to your rifle, you're back in action. That is your entire rotation. And again, most of the time you're just going to be using the rifle, and the secondary weapons are optional, but for min-maxing, it's definitely there. Okay, now let's take a look at that secondary playstyle, that like John Wick, or it reminds me of like a Yakuza kind of like build, because you got these automatic pistols that fire like crazy, right? The only thing we're missing is a samurai sword. So in this setup, you're going to be much closer range. So let's just imagine Tiago is the big boss, the mother. So what's going to happen is you're approaching, you're kind of far away. Okay, so we're going to go and start with the rotation here. So you're going to be much, much closer on the shooting versus the rifle. So let's say this is a Broodmother, Tiago. You're going to go ahead and start and drop your turrets as you're approaching, right? And then you're going to try and get your crit shot right away. And then drop this. And as you come in and you rotate around him, you're going to just start spamming. 1, 2, hold down your swap. Go back to your gun. Spam, 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 right? I normally go till it runs out of ammo. And that's it. As soon as it refreshes, it's almost time to go again. 1, 2, and hold it down. Go back. So again, you're going to tap, tap, and then hold. And that gets you from gun through both of your secondary weapons back to the gun. And of course, needless to say, as soon as your AoE freezes up, you can spam that to crowd control. Keep those turrets up. Remember, when you're dropping the turrets, you're basically proccing increases to anomaly power. There's numerous reasons why you want to do it. And obviously, if they start dying, you want to keep those up at all times, or if you need to reposition. So very, very simple element. You're going to be probably around this range like this. This is why I'm also saying it's more dangerous. You could get stomped on, etc. Can you go a little further away? Yeah, but I mean, it's just a little harder to get the crits. And again, you're not going to get the anomaly build. You want to be spamming Moaning Winds as much as possible here with this build. Again, this is debuff, debuff. You're doing as much damage. You're freezing, cool. We go. Again, that was a little premature, but you're swapping back over just as like that. Nice and simple. And those are your two different play styles. Pick the one you want. They're both absolutely deadly. Obviously, if you go in against any maps that have a lot of humans with easy headshots, I find the rifle is extra effective on that. But pick the playstyle you like, that you enjoy. You really can't go wrong. Needless to say, if you don't have the Anomaly, for example, you're going to want to default to that rifle, because this build playstyle of the pistols, you absolutely need the Moaning Wind mod for it to work effectively. With that being said, I do want to point out, you will notice at the end of your runs, your turrets will still out damage you. It's the only build I've seen pretty much that spams Moaning Winds, the Moaning Wind mods. And again, for those that are new, this is the Moaning Winds mod right here. Reloading creates a strong blast around you, dealing basically a little bit under 400k damage AoE within an 8-meter range, which is huge AoE. And again, all those debuffs are going to up that number significantly. And you can do it every 8 seconds. So by rotating, you can get a ton of damage out of this. But again, your turrets will still out DPS it. Okay, guys, now that you've seen how to put together these builds, the next part of the video, this video is going to be long, but this is kind of like my crowding achievement at the same time. So we've been going over 2 different variables, 2 different playstyles. So at this point, I'm going to show you 2 full run-throughs. The first one's going to be the rifle build, and kind of showing its strength and playstyle. And then the second playthrough is going to be with the handguns, as we see here, and showing its strengths and different playstyles. So by the time you finish watching this video, you're probably going to be able to say, yeah, you know what? I like playstyle 1 or playstyle 2. And on a side note, if you want to see what it feels like to play with somebody that plays this, make sure to come to my Twitch streams 6 days a week. I help run people through CT15 carries, have great fun with the community. Make sure to check that out. Again, LeeroyGamingStream, 6 days a week. Check my Twitch schedule on there for the exact days and times that I will be streaming. And follow me on Twitch, because I always put the latest updates and schedule changes on Twitch as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at that first run. All right, guys, I knew I was going to have hell to pay if I didn't do a run not using Moaning Winds. So I did say Moaning Winds was optional, and here's the proof. It's optional. Let's see it. There you go. As promised, as advertised, not a single Moaning Wind spam. Could probably knock off some time on this. I mean, in fact, I know you can if you rotate it in. Like when we walk through the hallway there and all those enemies were all bunched up, you could use it. But if you don't have it, or if you're anti-Moaning Winds, and if you're a hater, if a build uses Moaning Winds, well, there you go. Let's look at the numbers. All right. And I'm not making any cuts, just so I want to make sure nobody says I cut two different ones together. So here we go. 170 million total damage. Cryo turrets did 62 million. Wrath of Moloch did 43 million. Burn damage was 20 million. Toxic damage was a little bit under 20 million. Assault rifle actually did 14 million. I don't know what explosive barrel is, but blighted turret. Remember, you combine that with toxic, so really the blighted turret is responsible for 27 million. So 27 million plus the 62 million in that one player playthrough. You're talking about, we got what, 80, 90 million or so from the turrets, the rest for the mod, some dots, and a little bit on the rifle. There you go, gentlemen. My absolute favorite build. And if you were to throw in a little Moaning Winds there, it would just be mwah, icing on the cake. All right, guys. So that was pretty fun. So that was the rifle build in action. Now let's go ahead and take a look how the dual wield pistol, that close range variant of this build plays. See if you like that one better. And we'll, again, you can kind of compare and contrast the playstyle and find the one that is right for you. All right, that was a fun run, number 2. And let's go ahead and we'll take a quick look at the stats before we finish up here. You can see the numbers for comparison. As you see, very, very different playstyle. If you struggle with, getting crit shots, or maybe need something more reliable, especially if you're on a console, this is a really, really good setup for that. It's a lot of fun. Obviously, a little riskier because you're getting in close and melee monsters, but you're pretty tanky. So big damage. Obviously, it's a longer run, so that's why it's more damage than the other one. But the breakdown, the Moaning winds are pretty big, 110. But take a look if you combine the turret damage, cryo turret plus toxic damage plus blight turret, it's still going to be beating the Moaning winds, and that's for a build that is spamming Moaning winds. That is quite something to behold. All right, guys. So that brings my ultimate TURminator build to an end. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. If you watched the whole video, awesome. Kudos. Thank you. I know I'm known for my long form videos. It's not for everybody. But otherwise, hopefully you used the timestamps effectively and enjoyed it. Now, if you've watched this far, hopefully I've already earned your subscription. But if you haven't hit that subscription button yet, do hit it. I have a small channel that's been growing. I've been working my butt off to make this grow so I can create more and more content for you guys. So if you really want to help out, hit that notification bell. Not only are you going to be notified whenever my videos pop up, so you kind of bypass part of the algorithmic requirements, but it does help me quite a bit to be valued higher by YouTube, as you may or may not know. Of course, hitting those likes helps a ton. And if you want to interact with me, if you want to get help in Outriders, don't forget, once again, I stream on Twitch 6 days a week. LeeroyGamingStream is my Twitch channel. When you go there, you can check the schedule. I got instructions how you can support us, how you can join the queues on a nightly basis. Come have fun. Also, final plug for our Discord that's been going for about 2 weeks now. It's growing pretty rapidly. It's about 99% Outriders. So if you want to find groups, if you want to meet with me, if you just want to become part of the community, a positive community, please join. We'd love to have you. Once again, guys, it's Leeroy with Leeroy Gamings, and I will see you in my next video.